Marcus is a connoisseur of anything that's free, so he was happy to read the disclaimer on TurboTax Free Edition.
Roughly 37% of taxpayers qualify. Form 1040 and limited credits only. See how at TurboTax.com. That's me!
File your taxes 100% free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your max refund guaranteed. See if you qualify to file for free at TurboTax.com. See max refund guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Hey guys, welcome back to Derezed on Clownfish TV. This is Neon, and I have a very special guest this week. It's Troy Leavitt, Mr. Troy Leavitt, who you may recognize his name from very popular video games, including Disney Infinity and Hogwarts Legacy. And he's been kind enough to join us this week to talk about those games, his experience in the industry, and more. Mr. Leavitt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Neon. I'm really happy to be here.
So, why don't you tell our listeners what it is that you do, how you got into the video game industry, and
so I guess I'll wind the clock way back. I started in games officially being paid to make games in 1995, so that's kind of when I started, right when the PlayStation 1 came out. Prior to that, I was a gamer and I taught myself programming in high school and that sort of stuff. But when I entered the industry in 1995, it was a high-risk industry then, right? So a lot of people didn't know what we were doing. We were always trying to get our funding. And I went through like 3 studios in those first few years, being a kind of a writer, designer sort of thing in those first early days. The first game that I'm credited in is called VR Stalker, and it's for the 3DO.
Oh my God, the 3DO. Yes, yeah. I do.
So that's where that'll put an idea of when I started officially working in games. So then what I did over the years is after we went through several like small studios and I worked for Acclaim, and Acclaim got killed or whatever, they ran out of money. And then I finally joined Avalanche. I joined Avalanche in 2003, which is where I spent the rest of my career from 2003 until I left in 2021.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize Avalanche was around that long.
Oh yeah. Avalanche has been around. They passed their 20-year anniversary while I was there, and they're still going. Yeah, so they started, I think, 1995 also. The studio was formed by like 4 programmers who left a Salt Lake City studio that was the Acclaim studio. They were angry with how things were being run there, so they started their own studio, 4 programmers, and one of the programmers, John Blackburn, is still the head of the studio, 20-something odd years later. So. Oh, wow.
That's cool. It doesn't happen very often, right?
It doesn't. Yeah. It's a long time studio in the games industry is pretty rare anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we'll hopefully be able to talk about that and kind of the state of, gaming later on in the episode. But I want to ask you about one of my favorite family games, which is Disney Infinity. Now, for those of you who are listening who don't know what Disney Infinity is, you were probably living under a rock. It was a Toys to Life game featuring Disney characters. Think Skylander, but with Mickey and friends and like every other Disney property imaginable. And it was fantastic. It was a great game. It was a game that my family and I logged in so many hours playing that game. And unfortunately, it was canceled, I believe, prematurely. There were figures in development. Yeah. There were a bunch of figures in development, I guess, and they just pulled the plug. So if you can tell me about your involvement, because I know we have a lot of people that listen that are actually, believe it or not, as much as people think that we hate Disney, they're actually big Disney fans. They were fans of Disney Infinity. And if you can give us kind of any inside knowledge into what went into the game and what happened, it would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. I'll give you maybe a little background on how Disney Infinity got made and why I think it was really something special in the industry at the time. So when Disney picked us up, it was 2000. Actually, it's 2005. They picked us up because Avalanche had done the TAC series of games. TAC and the Power of Juju that then were Nickelodeon. Yeah. So that was kind of like Avalanche's touch on the radar because they were always doing licensed games prior to that. But that was an original IP. So Disney bought us with the intent to make some original Disney-based IP. But before we got to do that, they wanted us to do, some of their other licensed IP that they already had. And we started out by working on like Chicken Little, the Chicken Little game, and some other stuff. And what Disney, I think, was surprised by Avalanche's ability to take these properties and turn them into something that felt better than just a licensed product.
Yeah.
And so like one of the first games we did very early on in a very short time frame was a sequel to the first Chicken Little game called Chicken Little 2. And I was the game director for that. And what happened on that kind of set Avalanche on a new path is we asked Disney if we could make a new story in their existing universe, right? And usually Disney doesn't let people do this for their video games, right? That you have to fit all of their intellectual property. But we convinced them. It was kind of a small thing. So we made this little side game, this Ace in Action, and it was well received by Disney, I guess inside of Disney, right? By the people, even though it didn't get that well received outside of Disney, right? Outside of Disney, it was just kind of a game that nobody paid any attention to. But what that did is that started this process of Disney looking to Avalanche to treat their IPs for, going forward. And that's how we got in with Pixar. And once we started doing Pixar games, we developed a relationship very quickly with Pixar. And the one that really put us on the map was Toy Story 3. So Avalanche made the Toy Story 3 video game, and there's a lot of open world stuff in the Toy Story 3 video game. While we were making that, and we were working with the guys at Pixar, right, to make Toy Story 3, the idea came up, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a game that was based just around toys, all the different toys? And it started to percolate in this idea of we want to make a game that's based around Disney toys, kind of like Toy Story 3. But at the time, Disney didn't want to do it. They were like, that's too high risk. We don't, they didn't see the promise of it. Then Skylanders came out. And when Skylanders came out and Disney saw how much money they were making on Skylanders and their figures, they immediately said, hey, why don't you guys make something like Skylanders out there for Avalanche? And that was the impetus. That's what got the whole thing going, was the idea that we had on Toy Story 3 plus the proof of Skylanders came together to get the Disney brass to say, maybe we could actually do this like Skylanders. And Pixar, in particular, John Lasseter at Pixar backed us. He got into that position of saying, in order to make this work, we're going to have toys that all look like toys and came from the same universe, right? We can't have like a Woody that's really tall, next to something like a Mickey Mouse that's really small, next to, Darth Vader or whatever. They all had to have this common sort of design. And John Lasseter is the one who pushed Avalanche in the direction of coming up with the figures that you now see of being this like universal. They all look like they belong to the same set. And that's really Pixar's influence on Disney Infinity came from the John Lasseter discussions. So that Disney Infinity would not have happened without John Lasseter's backing, I guess is a good way to put it, right? That he was the one who helped us get Avalanche over the hump into making the actual product.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's why I'm like, I didn't realize that John Lasseter was that involved in Disney Infinity. I thought it was just one of those things where they just kind of had their people pass off these IP and say, here, just do something with it,
Yeah, and I feel like it's maybe important for people to know that Avalanche and Pixar for a while were very friendly, right? We were sending people back and forth between the studios. In fact, some of our producers that are at Avalanche now or came to Avalanche were former Pixar producers. And we've also sent some of our people who worked at Avalanche. Some of them went to Pixar, some of them went to Disney Feature Animation. So there's cross-pollination with Pixar, which I think was really, really good for the Avalanche mindset, because at the time, back when we were making this, Pixar was on top of the world, right? They were making all the great movies. Everybody wanted to be like Pixar. And so here at Avalanche, the studio in Salt Lake, we now had this in with Pixar, who was helping us to make our Disney Infinity that we were developing very authentic. Of course, they didn't actually do any of the development, but there was a close relationship there. So that was what allowed Disney Infinity to get greenlit. And then what happened? Well, I guess I think what's cool about Disney Infinity is that almost everything that's of any importance was done right there in that Salt Lake City studio, which means, all the technology behind it was also developed there too. So, the little base that you put stuff on, the little things you put on, the little RFID chips for the characters, all that was done with the hardware, right? all the sculpts of those little figures, right? Those were all designed by people at Avalanche too. They didn't go to a toy maker. They had the guys at Avalanche make them because they were, and that's fascinating, that it wasn't the toy team that did it. Yeah.
Huh.
So Jeff Bunker, who was the art director of Avalanche, really developed a lot of skills for working with intellectual property at that time, because Disney Infinity was trying to bring all these different intellectual properties together. And to me, this is where Avalanche gets its chops to later do Hogwarts Legacy, because Avalanche developed this ability to dig into intellectual property, understand it really, really well, and then disseminate what's cool about it throughout the studio, and then create something that feels authentic to the property, but still being new. And I think that's what you see in Disney Infinity. When you play Disney Infinity, all the characters feel real, all the events feel real, like Monsters, Inc. feels like the real place, if you go to the Star Wars things, it feels authentic, but it also feels new. It's all new stuff. And that was kind of the secret sauce, I think, of Disney Infinity was it feels right. It feels like a Disney property, but it also feels kind of new and fresh. There are no other games in any of the Disney universe where you can do things like, Darth Vader can force choke Buzz Lightyear, right? That will not happen anywhere else, right? But you can do it in Disney Infinity because they allowed us this ability to have the toys interact with one another.
So one of the things I love being an old school Disney fan is all the Easter eggs that were in Disney Infinity. I mean, you had Gus.
Yes.
Gus in the Main Street Electrical Parade and all these really obscure, references. And, as an old head, I was like, this is amazing, because the kids were, they were hooked on the Pixar characters and, the Star Wars and all of that. And I'm just like, I'm tooling around in the Main Street Electrical Parade floats. I think that's the best thing ever. And it was cool because, like you said, everything felt like it belonged in the same universe, because there's usually this disconnect with oh God, I'm gonna get in so much trouble. But if I would bring up Kingdom Hearts, right, and compare it feels like those worlds don't, and of course they have to change the art style of Sora, to match the world, and that's cool. I mean, I love Kingdom Hearts. I'm not saying anything, God forbid I say anything negative about Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom Hearts is a great game too.
It is a great game. Yeah. But it does feel like each of those worlds are a separate, self-contained thing. Whereas with, like you said, with Disney Infinity, it was it felt like a uniform world of Disney, and kind of like the Disney I think you'd imagine, the House of Mouse or something like that, where they're all existing in the same universe together, Yeah,
that Disney Infinity had that toy box, right, where you could bring in anything and from any of the play sets, put them together, and then you could build your own games. You could run around, just screw off, or you could make actual whole scenarios. And for a while, there was even on YouTube a Toy Box TV, where they were featuring some of the best toy boxes that people put together, the best games. John Vignacchi was hosting it, right? Who was one of the PR guys for Disney Infinity. And it was a weekly show. There was all these viewers. It was very popular. So Disney, I think, was surprised. In fact, I know they were surprised by how successful the first Disney Infinity was. They didn't have enough figures to meet demand on the first Disney Infinity. I hope that's not NDA trouble, but it's probably okay. Now, it's a long time ago, but they just didn't make enough figures for the first one, so you couldn't find them. And they were just blown away by how successful the game was when it came out. Which, of course, Disney does immediately the next thing. We need a sequel, and we need it fast. Yeah. And so then it was, Disney Infinity 2, and then the same thing. That one was pretty successful, but not quite as successful as the first one. They also overproduced figures on Disney Infinity 2, so then they ended up with a backlog, right, which cut into some profits. And then we get to Disney Infinity 3. Disney Infinity 3 doesn't do quite as well as 1 or 2, and it's only 3 years in. Market fatigue sets in, and then you start to hear the discussions about, are we going to do a Disney Infinity 4? And, right. So, yeah. And to me, I mean, you asked earlier what happened with Disney Infinity, I guess, just to jump to the end here. My belief, and based on what I heard from inside Disney Infinity or inside the studio, was that all 3 versions of Disney Infinity actually were profitable and did pretty well. But the projections were that each one was less profitable than the one prior. And their analysis of the market was the market is now fatigued. Disney Infinity 4 will be a money-losing proposition if we make a 4th version. That's my understanding. Their predictions were we're going to lose money if we go on to make Disney Infinity 4. And so even though some of us were already working on it, they decided that rather than try and put Avalanche to work on something new, they would just shut down the whole studio and close us out. And that's what they did. They shut us down in 2016 while we were still finishing stuff for Disney Infinity 3. In fact, I was still working on the Finding Dory playset when they announced they were closing the studio. And we still finished that thing out and published Finding Dory, the playset, but they didn't ever tell anybody, that it was launched. You can still go buy it, I think, but they just never had a launch event for the Finding Dory playset.
Yeah, I know that there were websites out there that had supposedly leaked images of figures that were in production or that were planned, and some of the ideas for 4 that were being kicked around. And I was shocked. I was really shocked because my understanding was at the time, and there were other Toy to Life games, right? We had Lego had one, and we had of course Skylanders. But my understanding was
Amiibo was out there too.
Amiibo.
Yeah.
That's Nintendo. That's a whole nother thing. But my understanding was it was like the market leader, like Disney Infinity was doing.
It was
gangbusters. And why? Because you had crossover from gamers and Disney fans who would collect anything Disney. And it just seemed a very weird decision to me personally that they just said, hey, yeah, we're just going to pull the plug on this, even though we're riding high,
It's crazy. Most of the folks at the studio felt exactly the same way. When they came in and told us, because they had this big celebration party for us. Wow, you guys did so great.
Yeah.
You made all this money. You've done 3 versions of Disney Infinity. The people love it. There's Toy Box TV, all this great. We're going to shut you down.
It blows my mind.
Oh yeah, and there were people at the studio who were very upset, very angry. It turned on a dime, and it was rough because John Blackburn, who's the head of the studio, had to say, "I've seen the math. I've seen where they get this." And he's like, I think that they're actually right with the math, that we've actually burned out the market. That if we do a Disney Infinity 4, it's unclear if it'll make its money back. So the way that Disney had set themselves up, they had set themselves up to kick one out every year. And it was just super high intensity. Yeah. It was very expensive to make all those figures and produce them. They just looked at their 4th version and said, this one's not going to make money. We'll shut everything down. Because, the studio is expensive to keep running if you don't.
Right.
It.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how expensive it is to make games. You're talking games and manufacturing toys at the same time. So you got two problems. It's not just getting the game out there, but you also have to, manufacture and distribute these figures too. But I never understood. And again, this is, I don't know if you would know or not, but I guess from my point of view, I'm like, well, why couldn't they keep it going and just offer DLC of characters? Why did we have to make figures? Why couldn't we say, hey, there's a new movie coming out, $20, download, all the characters from Incredibles 2 or something. And that's a pack, right. But we're not going to figure, or if we have a figure, we might pick one character that's super popular, and then the rest of these characters, you just download them as like DLC. It seems like that'd be a more economical way to go. But
no, I think you make some valid points, and I believe that they ran a bunch of scenarios before they decided to kill future Disney Infinity products. And it was a shock, like everybody else was shocked. We were shocked too. We did not see it coming. In fact, I remember I was working on the Finding Dory playset when we got the announcement, but I had already signed up. I was going to be the producer or the game director on The Last Jedi, which was going to be in Disney Infinity 4. And so I was signed up to go to Lucasfilm to read the script, but that never happened because, once they canceled Disney Infinity 4. So that's how in the gun we were. We were already getting started on Disney Infinity 4 when they told us, and hadn't even finished our Disney Infinity 3 requirements when they closed us down, which was really weird.
Yeah. And then everything went to like EA. It was like Bob Iger just decided, as I recall, it's been a while, but he just kind of decided, hey, we're just going to outsource everything to EA and call it a day. And that's what we're going to do,
Disney, the way that they're structured, at least in their games division at the time, had so much overhead that it made making games internally very expensive for them.
Yeah.
And so outsourcing, I think, was just their better option at the time. I don't know, details of the exact numbers, but I think that's why they said, all right, we'll just license and outsource, because Disney's always, they're about the bottom line. They were trying to make their money. Yeah.
That's a real shame, but you guys did amazing work. It's such a good game. It still holds up. it still holds up all these years later.
I'm glad to hear that. So I worked on 4 play sets for Disney Infinity as a game director. 4 of them. It was the Lone Ranger, and then it was the Avengers, the main play set for Disney Infinity 2, and then it was Inside Out with Pixar, and then it was Finding Dory with Pixar. So I did both of those at the end, both for Infinity 3, those last 2. And I always loved working with Pixar. Whenever we got to work with Pixar, I was like, oh man, this is great. I love these guys. So
I have friends that have worked with people at Pixar, and they said that Pixar then was fantastic. What they're like now, I have no idea. I can only guess, based on the headlines I've seen, where they're at right now. But back in the day, I guess it was definitely the place to be.
Yeah, it was really sad because John Lasseter got basically pushed out over allegations that I still don't know what was there. I still don't think there was that much.
No.
But when that happened, I honestly feel like, because that's 2016, I honestly feel like the loss of John Lasseter from Pixar signals a turn in how Pixar started to operate. So,
my personal opinion, we're starting to see the results of that right now at the box office. We're seeing movies that didn't have his hand, involved in any way. And we're starting to see the results, which are not good financially. They're not good critically. But it's not the same company. They're not producing the same quality of product, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Not to throw shade.
I agree with your opinion.
There, but, not to throw shade at anybody currently working there. I think if my personal opinion, some of the movies coming out would be fine if they were coming from like Illumination or some other studio, maybe. But they just don't have that Pixar quality to them, and I think people really underestimated like how much John Lasseter brought to the table, both with Pixar and with the Disney animation too. Because we're seeing the results of it now. These movies, I'm gonna be honest, are not as good as they were 10 years ago. But that's my personal opinion. So
no, I agree, and I'm a supporter of John Lasseter, even in spite of the allegations, because I could never figure out what they were, and that was one of the videos that got me in trouble. As I made a video in defense of John Lasseter, and then later the press picked up on that.
Yeah. So that's what was weird about it too. Because we've covered people getting canceled before on the channel. We talk about it often because sometimes it tracks. It's like, okay, this person shouldn't, whatever, and sometimes it's weird. Like the situation with John Lasseter. Again, not knowing the details of it, but the fact that he was allowed to ride out the rest of his contract the way that he was. If he had done something really egregious, in my opinion, Disney would have had him out the door immediately. And they didn't. Right. They're like, let him finish it out. We'll just stick him in the corner until the end of the year, and he can do the walk of shame down the hallway on the way out with his stuff. But, and the thing about that too is you had a lot of people complain when we went to Skydance, but so many Disney people went to work for him after the fact. If his behavior was that egregious, and sometimes people say, hey, this person is a known creep. He's been a creep for years. We know he's a creep. Stay away from him. In the case of John Lasseter, men and women who worked with him at Disney and Pixar went to work with him at Skydance. Yeah. And I don't think that would be the case if, again, not knowing the situation, not having the inside scoop or whatever, but that whole situation to me as an observer was very odd. It was very odd.
I got to meet him several times. In fact, when I was the game director for Cars 2, I met him, or actually pitched to him frequently, right? I'd have to go out because Cars 2 was his baby. And I just developed like a real admiration for him. Like he was really insightful. He was really good with video games. I mean, surprisingly, he didn't play very much, but he was really good at analyzing them, looking at them and seeing what you could read. And so you bring in the game and he would like look at what's on the screen and he'd give you all this feedback about the art and what you could see and the characters. And you'd be like, oh, wow, this is all great stuff. And it's not, specifically video game. Right. He just had that eye. And so I had this like really high opinion of John Lasseter, so that when all those allegations came out, I was like, I cannot believe that, and then you turn out, okay, what are the allegations? Well, there aren't any, like there's no person, there's no lawsuit. It turns out it was all just kind of rumor, like he hugs people too long and he makes people feel uncomfortable.
Everybody knows that. That's common knowledge. That's a joke.
He's a hugger.
Joke.
He's a hugger.
He's a hugger. Everybody
he
knows
hugged me. And I was like, sweet, I get hugged from John Lasseter. I love it.
Yeah, right. Loud shirts and lots of touching. That's my understanding. But yeah, I was floored, and you can see it now. I mean, it's just Disney now. I think him being ousted the way that he was ousted, it felt like they ripped the beating heart out of the creative side of Disney. And I think when they did that, because you're seeing it in all the other stuff coming out too, because he was in charge of studios too. So he had a hand in Wreck-It Ralph 1 and Frozen and all that stuff early on. And what they're turning out now is just not even in the same ballpark. And it just feels, to me, it just feels like product. And that kind of signaled, at least from my point of view, again, outside looking in, not knowing him personally, but it kind of signaled the beginning of the end of the Disney that we knew for years into what it has become now, which just feels very sterile and very corporate.
Right. And I agree. I think, modern Disney, the way it is now, well, and it looks like it's paying the price too, right?
Yeah.
They're in big, deep trouble now. What they say? They lost over, I don't know, $1 billion or $1.2 billion on their last earnings call. Yeah.
It's bad.
Big trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. They're, I mean, there's no way to put a positive spin on it, but people accused us for years of being like negative about Disney and overly negative or whatever. And we're like, no, we can see the iceberg coming. Like there's a huge iceberg coming because you're starting to see diminishing returns, and it's on every front. It's not just, it was the live action movies. It was the animation. It's the theme parks now. They're getting their tails kicked in the theme parks, which is the one thing that they always came out on top. And now it looks like Universal's going to just completely eat their lunch because they were too busy chasing acquisitions. And like I said, they stopped being a creative company and they're just chasing the bottom line. And they're not even doing that well now. I mean, it's just a series of very, very bad decisions that are all catching up to them, which is unfortunate because, I mean, I love Disney. I do. I worked on licensed stuff for years. My wife and I, it was a huge part of our lives. People think that we hate Disney and we don't. I would like to see them course correct if they can. I just don't know if they can at this point.
Yeah. So when you were playing Disney Infinity, you were playing it it was a family game, right? You were playing it with your kids. How is it okay to ask how many kids you have? And
yeah, we got 2 kids, boy and a girl. And they actually, we have a gaming channel. We never played Disney Infinity on it. They were too little when that was really, really big. But we used to play all the time.
I want you to notice something about all of the starter playsets for Disney Infinity. There's a female character, I guess, in all of them except the first one, because we realized we wanted families to be able to play together. So we'd often think of a family, boy, girl, mom, dad. Let's make sure that we've got a female figure in the pack for every starter kit. So that's why, like in the Avengers starter, there's Black Widow is there, right?
Yeah.
So that if you take it home, you don't feel like you're left out if you're the daughter in the family. So, I feel like right from the outset, we had this like target idea of let's sell to whole families playing together, mom, dad, son and daughter. Let's make it a game that everybody can get together. And that's really, I think, what the toy box was trying to be about. And
for our family, that's actually what happened. I mean, we collected the figures together. We played together. My wife would, if she didn't play, she would watch us play, and we were building all kinds of crazy stuff. And the kids were always playing other people's toy boxes. And it was a huge part of our family time for, the time it was out, a couple of years, and almost every figure. We owned almost every figure. The kids loved it. My daughter, I think Merida was her favorite. She used to play all the time. Yeah. And, I love the whole concept of it. And it was one of the last games that we played. I think we all played together as a family, and there aren't a lot of games like that now. There really aren't. We did Lego Star Wars for a while, and then it just started to get kind of silly from my point of view. But even that, like my wife didn't want to play. My daughter really didn't want to play either. It was usually me and my son would play. But Disney Infinity, we all played together, and I wish it was still around. I do, or some variation of it, even if it was another IP, just something in that vein. I wish we had that again.
I'm friends with a lot of the old Avalanche folks, just on normal social media, and I still see them talking about Disney Infinity now and then. Every now and then you'll see somebody post something about, hey, I was playing Disney Infinity over at a friend's house, and I think there's just a general sense of goodwill for everybody who participated in the Disney Infinity project. Like I haven't heard anybody at the studio, at Avalanche, or even outside associated with Disney Infinity who has a negative opinion of their time spent working on it, right? It was very difficult. It was very intense, but we all felt like what we were doing was a good product for families, very much in line with the Disney property, and it was very successful. So there's a real sense of accomplishment, I think, inside of Avalanche for having made Disney Infinity, even though outside of the studio, people tend to think of it, oh, it failed. Disney Infinity was crap. It choked. And every now and then you'll see people say, what did Avalanche ever do before Hogwarts Legacy? They just made a bunch of crappy kids games. And I'm always like, what about Disney Infinity? That was $1 billion product too, guys.
Yeah, Disney Infinity. And I've defended it a couple of times on the channel, because I said, about Disney shutting down divisions. I said they'll shut down divisions that are profitable but not profitable enough. And I always pointed Disney Infinity as being an example of that. Like it was a successful, profitable game. It just wasn't, for whatever reason, it didn't math out. It wasn't profitable enough for them, and they thought they would be better off getting rid of it. And really unfortunate though. But thank you again for your contribution. It was a lot of fun. Our kids had a lot of fun back in the day with it. And I'm kind of like, should we dust the Wii off and give it another try? I'm like, does it still work? It's been a while since we've played it. But
sometimes it still works, but I think once they dropped all the network support for it, it's hard to get to run sometimes. I don't know. I haven't tried it myself in a long time.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Wish you could like mod it or something. Not totally doing that. That would have been awesome if Disney had opened that thing up, right? Like Roblox or something, and just like let people just freaking run with it. Can you imagine? Well, no, I can imagine some of the stuff that we would have seen. Yeah, it's not a very good idea, but it would have been fun if we had like a modding community. Maybe there is one out there. I'm not aware of it. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything else going on Disney Infinity either.
All right. So I guess
we can pick it up from there, right?
Let's move on. We mourned. We mourned
the great game.
So it was a good game. Go check it out. If you guys can check it out. If you haven't played it, go check it out. It's good.
Or just look up like Toy Box TV or something.
Yeah.
It's fun. You can see that it was great. I really liked it. We would have kids out to the studio. We actually had a few things. And when you interact with fans and you see them light up and you see them enjoy it, that's why you make games, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you're in game development and you're not doing it for the player, what are you doing? Get out of game industry and go do something else, right? You need to keep in mind that you're working for players, right, and players are your customers. Treat them with kindness and respect. And so when we had people come out to Avalanche and they loved us for it and we love them, it was like, oh, this is how the game industry is supposed to be. Players and developers living together, loving each other, learning from each other. I feel like that's the promise of the industry that I feel has kind of been lost in the last decade or so. That now it seems like devs and players are often at odds, and that really makes me sad.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. Like I wasn't involved. I keep having to remind people, like, I didn't even know what Gamergate was until a couple of years ago. So that whole thing, like, I have no freaking idea. But the industry has definitely changed in a lot of ways. Since I was reading EGM when I was a kid. I literally grew up in arcades. My uncle actually worked for a vending machine company. He used to take me around. I'd take the quarters out of the machines and stuff. So I've been there since the beginning, and freaking love video games. I actually tried out for Sega. I almost got a job at Sega. Wow. when I was a kid. Yeah, when they were in Redwood City, and I couldn't afford to live in San Francisco though. So that's why I didn't pursue it. But I love video games, and there was always this like camaraderie with, like, if you were a gamer, whether you were making games or writing about games or playing games, like, we had that in common, right? Everybody had that in common. And now it just seems so divisive and caustic. And, you've got these like little tribes of people, and, I don't like that. I want it to go back to just games being fun. I want people to just have fun. And I'm not really seeing that personally. I'm not seeing it from a lot of the bigger studios. I'm seeing it more from like the indie space. that there are people out there just making games, good games, just because they want to make games because it's fun, you know?
Yes, yeah, and that's so important. I really feel like the AAA game industry has kind of lost its way for, they're so expensive. It's just like Hollywood is what it reminds me of.
Yeah,
you get to this point where they're just huge budgets and a lot of interference from the overhead and the executives because they're investing so much. They always think they know what to do because, but they almost never do because they're rarely game players themselves. And that's always pressure in game development, that the executive teams want their game now, they want it great, and they want it,
yesterday.
They want it. It's just insane how a lot of the decisions about what makes or doesn't make a good game seems to come from people who don't really like games at the top, right? They just like money. And so they'll make decisions, I feel, that are poor. Now, fortunately, at Avalanche, I feel like there's been a lot of pushback, but we weren't immune to having a lot of combats with executives all along the way, where they would be pushing back to. It's almost always to cheapen the experience and make it faster or make it lighter or whatever. That's almost always when an executive comes in, they want you to lighten the game and save money.
You know what I miss, Troy? I miss a complete game on a cartridge or a disc. There was no DLC. It was like it had to ship as good as it could be, right? You couldn't fix it later. Now I feel like AAA titles especially are just rushing to market to get it out there, to get the money, and then they're like, we'll just patch it later. That's
so this is a good time. Let's segue into Baldur's Gate 3 real quick, because
all right,
because going on in the industry right now, I've seen these things about some of the other developers, I guess, and I don't want to name any names, but that they're complaining that Baldur's Gate 3 is too ambitious or too big a game, and so that in the future, have you seen this?
No.
There's in fact, I think
it's too good. Wait, I've never heard that complaint. Wait. Okay. So the game is too good. So the bar is going to be raised.
Yes. Yeah. IGN just did an article not long ago saying that there are some in the AAA industry. I think it's some in Blizzard, Bungie, and who else they say, Bethesda or somebody. I might have those wrong, but they were saying that we shouldn't expect games of this scope, caliber, and quality from the AAA studios. That Baldur's Gate is an anomaly. Like they're like they're managing expectations for future games from these other studios that didn't even work on the Baldur's game or the Baldur's Gate 3 game, right? And it's very strange. I'm over there going, guys, if they love the game, learn from it. Go out and figure out what makes the game great, adopt it, bring it into your games, and make your games that much better. Live up. They've raised the bar. Don't beat them up for raising the bar.
God, that's
to
insane.
Try and achieve the bar. Yeah.
All I've heard about Baldur's Gate is bear sex. Lots and lots of bear sex. That's, but like the fact that you can have sex with a bear in a game, I guess, is, just kind of speaks to how ambitious it was. I remember being completely blown away. Again, this tells people how old I am, but when Ultima 7 came out, and Ultima 7 just blew the freaking roof off of what you could do in a PC RPG. Like you could do pretty much anything. For the time, you could do anything you could think of in this game. Like, I want to make bread. I can just make bread. I want to kill that guy. I can just kill that guy, and then I can make bread. But I have to deal with consequences. But I can do it, and that was just completely unheard of. It was so open. Like, people didn't even know how to beat the guy. I remember, like, nobody knew how to beat the game because they're like, "What do you do?" It's like, well, you figure it out. It's not linear. You kind of have to. There's a story in there somewhere, but you got to figure it out. But I have never heard of anyone being like, well, this game's too good. We can't do it. We can't, just make shittier games so we feel better about. I mean, that's some Harrison Bergeron level crap. Like, you have to make subpar product just so other people feel good about themselves. Yeah,
it's a very strange reaction that that Baldur's Gate 3 is being that successful that you've got some developers that are like dissing it for being successful and well liked, and I'm like, that is the dumbest thing to to go after a game for. I don't really understand it. But anyway, so I played a little bit of Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm going to learn from it at least. I mean,
right?
Makes it good. Yeah.
Be like, okay, we get a couple $100 million and have about 5 or 6 years. We can do this too. Well, speaking of ambitious, can we segue into Hogwarts Legacy?
Yeah, let's talk Hogwarts Legacy.
Very ambitious title, and a lot of unnecessary controversy attached to this title. But it has sold incredibly well, and it's been very, very well received. So tell me the story of Hogwarts Legacy and how you got involved in that.
Sure. So after Disney shut down Avalanche, immediately Warner Brothers shows up on the doorstep, knowing that this was a pretty good studio. They were looking to expand, contacted John Blackburn, right? And they started like really quickly trying to resurrect the studio. So people are actually leaving the studio to go home, and they're over trying to make deals with Warner Brothers to bring it back alive, all at the same time. And it took them about 6 or 7 months to get the deal inked, but then Warner Brothers bought the Avalanche studio, and most of the people who were at Avalanche turned right around and came right back to Warner Brothers. I took a while longer because I was making videos at the time. I didn't come back for about 6-8 months after they were open. But the first thing this is the funniest thing. First thing Avalanche does for their Warner Brothers thing is not Hogwarts Legacy. It's Cars 3. They do a Disney license program for the studio, for the company that just fired him, right? That just shut him down, because Warner Brothers is like, well, you guys are paying people to make games?
Right.
Well, this Disney studio just made Cars 2 and Pixar loved it. They would love it if you do Cars 3. So why don't you pay us to make a game for you? And that's exactly what happened, is that Disney paid Warner Brothers to make a game for them with the studio that they had just closed like a year before. So isn't that weird?
Yeah, see, I didn't realize. I thought it was the other way. I thought you guys like did Cars 3 before the whole. No, that's wild.
That was completely done under the Warner Brothers auspices, and it was all inked after the studios were put back together. So yeah, that was not a legacy product from Disney. That was all new for Avalanche.
Oh wow!
And they did it because Pixar liked Cars 2 so much that Avalanche had done, that they wanted a sequel for their next movie. And so they were like, hey, let's get Avalanche to do it. We love what they did. Yeah.
Hey, money spends the same, right? Keeps people working, right?
Yep. So while that was going on, while they were finishing Cars 3, the Warner Brothers team was like, well, what's Avalanche going to work on next? And there was a lot of discussion about resurrecting or bringing the Wizarding World into this, right? But they didn't know what studio they were going to put it at. And they made kind of a calculated guess that Avalanche was probably the best studio for it because of our treatment of intellectual property over at Disney. And they realized, Warner Brothers executive team was smart enough to realize that the treatment of the Wizarding World was really what was going to make or break the next game, right? They knew they had to make a high quality game that felt right. And so I think that's why they picked Avalanche, was because Avalanche had this history of working on IP, and they treated the IPs with respect and had all this, insight into how to work with an intellectual property and keep the intellectual property holders happy, which is very difficult to do, right?
Right.
But Avalanche had this history of doing it with like 50 intellectual properties for Disney Infinity. They had done everything. They'd done Star Wars. They had done, they'd done feature animation. They'd done all that stuff. So that's why Hogwarts Legacy got placed at the Avalanche studio. But then, of course, there was a lot of discussion about what type of game are we going to make. We knew it was going to be an open world game, but in those first, little bit of development, there was a lot of what exactly is this game going to be? And you can see some of that in the remnants of the game that actually came out. You can see that it started in one place, kind of evolved over time, and became the open world RPG that it was. But I think when it started out, it was a little more, it was less aimed at being a traditional RPG, I think, when they started, and a traditional open world RPG. And I think it was a little more on the simulation side, but then they kind of moved as they, if I were to say what I feel happened with the Hogwarts Legacy development cycle, is that the more that they interacted with players, the more that they developed, the more Avalanche recognized they were making what I would call as a mass market open world RPG.
Yeah.
That they had so many players in the Wizarding World who hadn't played open world RPGs before, right? But they really wanted to play this version, that they had to keep the game simple and as accessible as they could. And I think some of the criticisms of Hogwarts Legacy when it came out, that the game is a bit oversimplified, that there's a lot of collectathon stuff in there, and these are valid criticisms. I think a kind of legacy from the studio trying to be more mass market and trying to have lots of easy things for people to pick up on and understand, rather than being too hardcore on RPG. That's kind of just my opinion of how the game evolved over time, for being more hardcore to being more mass market. Through development.
I mean, given the property though, that's going to happen. I mean, it's kind of the same with Disney Infinity, where you had, players picking this game up that maybe never played Skylanders, or maybe it's the first time they picked up a video game in years, but they're going to play a Disney game with their kids. So, you've got something like Harry Potter, you're going to have a lot of casuals that are just Harry Potter fans, movie fans, or, fans of the book who are going to pick this game up just because it's Harry Potter,
Right. There were some people who they had never played a video game before, but by God, they were going to play Hogwarts Legacy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I wish, and something like, I understand, hardcore gaming. I get on people too, because there, a lot of game journalists talk about, they want things on easy mode, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of, I think gaming has become so compartmentalized. Like, we don't have a good access point. It's either something's like really kiddie, or it's like, freaking Dark Souls or something, but you don't have a lot of, mass market games that are right in that sweet spot of, if this is somebody's first game, it's not juvenile, but it's not the hardest thing ever either,
Yeah. I feel that Hogwarts Legacy, as it was released, did a pretty good job of hitting that sweet spot. At the same time, I think that the criticisms of Hogwarts Legacy about it being kind of shallow and being kind of a collectathon and that sort of stuff are often valid. And like, there's a lot that can be said there, but at the same time, Avalanche's strength was to take an IP, make that IP feel real. And I believe that the Hogwarts Legacy game gets bonus points from having such an authentic, real feeling wizarding world that I don't think any other studio in the world could have done as well, because Avalanche had this understanding of property so deep that when they got onto Hogwarts Legacy, the whole studio just like says, all right, we are going to be Wizarding World experts now. Yeah. Everybody figures out what house they're in. All the writing team reads all the books again and again and again. They just dive into the lore because they know they're playing to an audience of fans, and that's their core target. They want to make sure the fans are happy. They're not trying to build their own thing. They're trying to make, something that the fans will appreciate, rather than rewrite the Wizarding World, right? And I think you can feel that.
Yeah. It feels authentic. I mean, it feels, it's visually impressive. I mean, especially on last gen consoles, like how in the heck are they going to pull this off? I was wondering that they're doing it somehow. They're doing it, but it really does feel like it belongs. I would say more so than even some of the early Harry Potter games. Can I say that? I don't want to throw shade at other people, but some of the early Harry Potter games were kind of, they're okay. But this actually feels like it's pretty authentic, which is good, because that's one thing you don't see, in my opinion, with people who are caretakers of an IP, is that a lot of times they want to put their own personal spin on things. And there's a reason that this property has the number of fans it has. Harry Potter is a massive, massive success. You don't break it. You don't decide you're going to rewrite everything. You can add to the mythos, but you don't fundamentally change what makes it work, right?
Yeah, I feel like the studio did a really good job at making the player kind of central in the story, and then making it feel like it's your own story, and yet it's still, in the Hogwarts Legacy universe. Like, they did a good job. I think Avalanche did a good job. Not a perfect job. If there's ever a sequel, or if they do anything, I'm sure they'll do a lot better. But for what it was, and the time frame they had, and all the issues they faced, there was a lot of development issues on Hogwarts Legacy. It turned out pretty darn good, right? I'm very pleased with the final product, with the understanding that it could have been better, of course. But yeah,
right. Well, that's everything, though, right? I mean, if you're happy with it, I think anybody who works in any creative industry, like, if you're happy with something, if you're happy with it, like, you're doing it wrong, because you never want to be full. You never want to be satisfied. You always want to do better. You always want to make something better. You always want to beat yourself. Do better than you did the last time. And I think when you become complacent, then that's That's what blows my mind about Baldur's Gate. It's like, oh yeah, this is too good. I'm like, no, that's just the bar has been raised, man. That's, could you imagine like, hey, Final Fantasy VII came out. Yeah, it's too good. We can't beat that. It's never going to happen. That's rein it in, Square. Don't do that again. So how do you feel now that Hogwarts Legacy is out there and you've seen the reaction to it? And you've seen the sales numbers, do you feel, given, for those of you who don't know, and I don't know how much we want to go into that, given the controversy around it and all of that, do you feel vindicated in somewhat that this game has become such a massive success?
Yes. The short answer is yes. I feel like the gaming press that came after Hogwarts Legacy, and via me, right? I was kind of just collateral damage, right? They were going for Hogwarts Legacy. They didn't care about
I
Troy guy. So they were after Hogwarts Legacy, and they were trying to hurt its sales. They were trying to damage it because they wanted, to hurt JK. And so when that failed, when that went, belly up, and it actually, the game did very, very well. In fact, I think the controversy probably drew more eyes to it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say whether the boycott and all the gaming press negativity hurt the game or helped the game. I kind of think it helped it, but it also may have, discouraged maybe 1 million people from playing it who would have. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But I do feel vindicated that the game came out and people realized it was not this nasty game that was pushing some monstrous agenda about how we're trying to be, anti-Semitic with the goblins or some crazy garbage that they were making up.
Yeah.
It's just, it came out, it did what it said it was going to do. Most players loved it. You didn't have to know anything about the controversy. It was completely unrelated. So yeah, there was a real vindication in, especially when all those gaming press outlets that said, we're not going to cover the game, like The Gamer, they come out, we're not going to cover this. And then they end up publishing like 15 articles about it anyway, because they just can't, ignore how successful it was.
Yeah. We had a little bit of a run-in with the editor of The Gamer. One of our writers actually wound up on a podcast with Stacey Henley, I think is
Stacey Henley. Yeah. She's the one who called me an alt-right Gamergate troll.
Yeah. So one of our writers was on, I believe, a BBC podcast, and Stacey spoke out of turn, and the BBC had to apologize on behalf of Stacey Henley, and that was actually the episode that had our writer Jake James Lugo. He was on that, and he was like, I don't understand. He was debating her, and he's like, I don't understand why a person can't just separate the art from the artist and realize even this game, like JK wasn't, from my understanding, wasn't that heavily involved in it.
She was not involved at all.
Okay. So I mean, it goes on the record, J.K. Rowling was not involved in this game at all.
And that was, they said that very clearly all the way along, that J.K. was, so in between J.K. and Avalanche, and I think this is public knowledge, so I don't think I'm getting in any trouble here, but there's something called the Blair Partnership. The Blair Partnership oversees all of, I think, J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World properties for authenticity and quality. And so they've got like a team that just, knows her lore extremely well, knows all the other properties and what's being juggled out there. So we interacted with them, right? Okay. And we never interacted with J.K. that I'm aware of. I'm sure at points, Blair Partnership probably took things back to J.K. and said, hey, here's the game. What do you think? And that sort of stuff. But, she's not a gamer. She wasn't involved in the story. She wasn't involved in the character. She didn't, she didn't do anything. She wasn't involved in the creation of the castle. There was no JK influence. Avalanche was doing all of that, right?
So what's interesting about that is, the argument then was, she's getting paid every time a copy of this game sells. I'm like, she's getting paid every time you buy a butterbeer. She's getting paid every time you go to a Universal theme park, even indirectly, because they pay her residuals every year for the Wizarding World. So even if you go to Universal and you don't ride a damn thing in the Wizarding World because you're boycotting JK, she's still getting paid. So, I'm saying, if you subscribe to HBO Max, she's still, Warner Brothers is still paying her. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to do these mental gymnastics is to try to break this woman who you cannot break. She's one of the wealthiest women in the world. I don't even know what she'd have to do to go broke, right? She's not going to wind up destitute in a box. It's not going to happen. So stop it. it's just the stuff you would have to avoid just to make sure she doesn't get a nickel from it is pretty astounding. Every company associated with her, when you've got all these food companies making Harry Potter tie-in products, you've got toy companies, Lego. Why aren't they boycotting Lego? They're making Harry Potter toys. Right, but for some reason, the gaming press, and I don't understand this, and I can't wrap my head around it, they zeroed in on the game. I don't know if it's because that's the only thing they feel like they have control over is the game industry. They can't control Lego. They can't control Kellogg's or whoever's making Harry Potter foodstuffs. They can't control Universal. That's too big for them to take on. But they can try to put some pressure on Avalanche or Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of folks in the game industry were very self-righteous, right? They put themselves in this position of we are better than even the gamers. We have to tell people what they can and can't play and what's right and what's wrong for you to play. And that, to me, it felt like almost like this religious approach to it. Like, we're going to come in and tell you what's good and what's bad because we are the elites. We're the journalists. We know what's good for you. We know what's bad for you. And that's what it felt to me was going on with Hogwarts Legacy, is that they were like, well, J.K. Rowling is so toxic. This is like, she's infecting everything that she's ever touched. It's like purity culture. It's like some sort of, I don't know, like almost like a disease or something. Yeah. And so it's very strange that they were like, you can't have anything to do with her. You have to get rid of all your stuff. And so to me, that was their motivation, was JK was in their crosshairs and Avalanche was just off to the side here making this game. And so they were, let's try and get at her through the game. That's what it feels like. And then let's try and get at her through me, right? Because that was what I got called out for. I'm sure that it had, I'm pretty confident it had really nothing to do with my YouTube channel, even though they tried to make the news story about my YouTube channel. But there's nothing on those old videos that were really problematic.
I went through some of those old videos, and I thought your takes were very mild and very tame. I think it was just like what happens with this, and we've covered this enough. We've been on the receiving end of it too, ourselves. And what usually happens is they find a target and they will pour through your tweet history. They will pour through your social media. They will find associates. They'll find friends. They look for anything to get you with, any technicality to get you with, because you're already guilty. They just have to find the smoking gun. And look at what happened to poor Carolyn from Limited Run Games. It took them to go back 7 or 8 years to find a tweet that wasn't even, I don't think it was a transphobic tweet at all, but they had to go back 7 or 8 years to find one tweet just to justify the fact that she was in the crosshairs because she followed the wrong people on Twitter. So in your case, I believe it was, they wanted to destroy this game, and they thought if they got rid of, one of the big shots over there that they could take it down. And it didn't happen. It actually sold more copies. Congratulations, Kotaku. You helped sell a lot more copies of this game. But
I think you read it right, that they were out for the game. And the funny thing is, and this may be kind of strange, even though I feel like I was kind of sacrificed a bit on the altar. The thing is I was not pushed out by WB. Avalanche, I was on good terms, but I had these family issues going on that had already, I'd already moved to Nevada to deal with. And so I kind of did like Danny Glover or whatever, like, I'm getting too old for this. I don't need this pressure on the game stuff, which was killing me, and the stuff with the family. And so I pulled the ripcord. Sometimes I think now in hindsight, I pulled it too early because things with the family worked out faster than I thought they would. Like about 4 or 5 months later, I was like, oh, okay, things are starting to, things look okay by that November. But at the time, stuff with my family was so hot that I thought, wow, this is going to take all my time anyway, right? There was problems. I mean, I've never really said what was going on with my family. It was not a physical health issue, but it was kind of a mental health issue where I had a family member who was staying with me. And so, it was one of these difficult situations that I was like, I'm going to pull the ripcord and bail on this if this is how it's going to be for the rest of the development, because that's what it looked like at the time. I mean,
and that's the problem. It's like they don't, I think the goal, because they know they can't, 9 times out of 10. Now, in some cases, employers will buckle or whatever, but 9 times out of 10, it's to me, it seems like it's psychological. It's like they know they don't have any real power, but they figure if they wear you down enough, if they make you think the world's out to get you, if they make you think you're an awful person, if they just let you know that they're going to be harassing you at every turn, every time you fire up the computer, there they are.
My Twitter lit up. Yeah.
Eventually you will just give it up and walk away from it. And that's what the goal is basically to strong arm you, bully you into shutting up, shutting down. And these people are weak. I mean, we've dealt with them for years, off and on, different instances. And, it's just a lot of it is, they have their reasons. I think there's, you want to talk about, mental problems. I think there are a lot of these people that find targets like that have a lot of their own issues that they're dealing with in their own lives. And it makes them feel powerful. It makes them feel like they're in control. If they can control somebody, they can't control their own lives, but if they can control somebody else, or they can control media or something, then that gives them a little bit of power, and they feel better about themselves.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I mean, the thing that triggered my whole debacle was from some Leroy Jenkins, or I can't remember what his name was, but he tweeted, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember his name ever. I think it's actually Liam or something, but
oh yeah. Is that
Liam Robertson? That was he sent one tweet, right? It was one tweet that made me look bad, and that's all they took. That was the whole thing. They took one tweet and ran. And next thing I know, there are 100 articles about me. I mean, tons of articles. It's crazy.
But what you're not seeing, what we figured out, is that one tweet is the result of probably months of coordination on a Discord somewhere.
Really?
And these journalists are all talking to each other, Slack and Discord, a lot of them for a lot of different, and I don't think the owners of the publications would be very happy to know that, because technically you're competitors. You should not be, comparing notes. But when you see coordinated attacks, because we actually have screenshots from different attacks on people from different Discords. When you see the media go after a target, a lot of especially in our space, especially like in the nerd space, it is, by the time it becomes public, they've already got the game plan laid out in private. They're all coordinating. We saw this with comics people. We've seen it with anime people. They already know what they're going to do. You got this person at this publication talking to this person at this publication. Okay, so I'm gonna put this tweet out there. You're going to do an article about this tweet, and then this other person's going to do an article about your article, and we're going to saturate the Google News feed. So when you Google Troy Leavitt, all you're going to see, and these people, they do know how to manipulate. I mean, they're not stupid. I mean, they're naive, I think, but they're not stupid. They know how to manipulate Google to some degree. And so they're like, okay, we've manipulated the Google News feed. So when you Google this guy's name, all you're going to see is like 15 different articles, and it's going to appear like the entire world hates this guy, when in reality, it might be like 3 or 4 people. And again, you might just be collateral damage. It wasn't because of you personally. It was like, no, we had to take this guy out because we're on a holy crusade against J.K. Rowling in this game, and we can control video games, but we can't control Universal, and we can't control Lego, but we can sure as hell put some pressure in our space. And I don't think it's working anymore. I think Hogwarts Legacy, from my point of view, as a guy just that covers this stuff, was a huge tipping point where I think it's shown a massive spotlight on just how out of touch, petty, and catty a lot of these video game journalists are. And I think it might in some way be inadvertently leading to a lot of the layoffs that we're seeing, because I think there were some outlets that are like, well, we refuse to cover this game, or we refuse to cover that game. And the publishers are probably like, this is the most popular game on the planet right now, and you're telling me you refuse to
cover it. Yeah. What are you doing?
Cover it. Yeah. So all that traffic is gone, and that traffic is what pays your salaries. So I guess if you're not going to do your damn job, you're out the door, because that's what we hired you to do, is bring traffic to this website. So I think in a roundabout way, it was a huge, because like right after that, we started seeing a lot of journalists get gone, and a lot of these sites being like, yeah, we're going to double down on AI, because you know what? The computers don't talk back yet. Give them a few years. But
I didn't know that they might be coordinating behind the scenes, if you have evidence of that, but it does kind of make sense. What my own experience. I mean, I was surprised at how quick, like both Anita Sarkeesian and Brianna Wu both had comments about my plight within minutes of like the Kotaku article, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
wow, that was fast.
They're all talking to each other. I'm just saying, it's been my experience. I don't know in this particular case because I don't have any inside knowledge of your situation, but in other situations, I do have screenshots where we had journalists back and forth on Discord, and it was, planning, we don't like this part. So you have like the journalists and the hangers on and the people that want to be in the industry, whether it's this or animation or comics, and they all kind of get together and they're like, we're going to get rid of this person. And then, and yeah, it's just like clockwork. And then you can see it, all the articles come out, boom, 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 boom. And it's the same. Or you've got carpetbagging journalists that, and this happened with Comicsgate. We had one guy that was writing for like 3 different sites, and he was writing anti-Comicsgate articles on like 3 different sites. So it gave the impression when you Googled what is Comicsgate, well, oh my God, look at all these websites that are, this is the worst thing ever. They're just a bunch of freaking neo-Nazis, because all these Google results say they are, because they manipulated the feed. Because Google, how the algorithm works is the more cited an article is, the more authority it has, the higher it ranks in Google News. And if they're all citing each other, you know what I'm saying? It bumps all the negative stuff to the top of the pile. And that's what I believe was going on, because you can see it. You see it. When you start to look for it, you start to look for patterns, you start to see, oh, this was obviously coordinated, because it's like clockwork. Here they come. It's like, I call it the chum bucket. They dump the chum bucket, and here come the sharks, and they're all going to go after this target because they've already decided this person is going to get canceled, for whatever reason.
Yeah, that was very much my experience. I went from, quietly working on a video game for totally haven't forgot about my YouTube channel from years ago. And then one day I just wake up and there are articles all over, and my Twitter is lit up, and people are trying to get to me on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and everywhere I go, people is like, wow, you're an awful alt-right bigot. And I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah, and
you made videos 5 years ago.
Even the timing of this, I've seen that too. A lot of times it'll happen over a weekend. It'll happen, so first thing Monday morning, the person gets blindsided with a cancellation. Like, they know how to game the system. I mean, it's one thing. Like, if these gaming journos can't play video games to save their lives, they can game Google News to make it look like you're the most awful person to ever walk the earth. And I'm sorry you got caught up in that, but it is, we've been watching this for 5 or 6 years now, and it's absolutely insidious. And I honest to God think this is why so many of these publications are laying off nerd journalists. Basically, I think they know they've got shitty people, but I think they're worried about firing them because they're worried about retaliation. But the flip side is, you take their platform away, you take their power away. What are they going to do? Just freaking tweet? Well, they don't even want to use Twitter anymore because Elon Musk owns it now.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and it's gross. It's high school, middle school shenanigans with real world consequences. But a lot of these people, I don't think they're living in the real world. I really don't. I think to them, it's like they look at people that disagree with them as just, pixels on a screen to be gotten rid of, and that's it. Like, you are a video game villain. In their minds, you're a boss that they got to get rid of to move on to the next level. And they don't view it as like you're destroying an actual person's life,
It was very strange to see that happen, because you see these reports on you that aren't true, right? They just make it up. They don't care. Like, I was called alt-right a lot, and I've never considered myself alt-right. I'm centrist libertarian in my political views. And I actually had on my, on my page, a little political compass, and I'm right there, centrist libertarian, but they don't care. They, the alt-right, and then they call me anti-feminist. And then the next thing I heard was that I was anti-Semitic. And I was like, where did that come from? I started seeing people calling me a known anti-Semitic guy, and I'm like, wow, that is really crazy. Yeah,
that means that in their circle, you're known no good, Nick. We've been down this road too. We've had a lot of people, mostly with animation and comics, have tried to say the same things about us, and it's like, then people actually look into it, and they're like, these are like the most boring, middle of the road people ever. Like, I guess my thing is, like, are you that weak that somebody with very mild opinions threatens you? but usually it's something bigger, and in your case, it was they wanted to get rid of the game completely because they were on a holy crusade against, J.K. Rowling. And look, and our writer, Jake James, even brought this up, when he was talking to Stacey Henley. It was like, you don't have to agree with what she said. You don't have to agree with what J.K. Rowling said, but that doesn't mean you have a right to go out there and tell people they have to boycott this game. There are so many people out there that don't even know what she said. They're not perpetually online. They don't even know who wrote Harry Potter. They just know they like Harry Potter books, or they like the movies or whatever, And so right. You're asking people to get involved in something that's not even their fight really, and taking the fun out of games. And but
yeah, I was gonna jump into a little bit of Hogwarts Legacy, maybe behind the scenes development stuff that maybe you guys haven't heard that I thought
that'd be
interesting.
Great.
I always have to be careful with NDA, but one of the stories that I've kind of wanted to tell, but that I don't know if I could until recently. Now I think that I probably can. So a lot of folks have recently pulled up in Hogwarts Legacy that there was a lot of stuff that was cut, right? There was a lot of things in Hogwarts Legacy that didn't make the final product. And in particular, there's a lot of stuff related around NPC behaviors and the things that they, the people have discovered that there was a lot more at one point that we were planning to do with non-player characters and the interactions. And that's absolutely true. Didn't make it into the final product, And I think a lot of people are going, well, why? What happened? So here's the brief story. So when I came back to Avalanche, I came back as a designer, not as a producer. I didn't want to be a producer again. I wanted to get my hands dirty, right? Because as a producer, you're working more in the intelligence side of game development. I wanted to actually work on things. So I came back as a designer on what was the NPC behaviors team. We were trying to make the NPCs really cool in the game with all their features. As we were developing that, and this, you can see it in the credits, at the very end of the credits, you'll see in loving memory of Dave Ross.
Okay.
So Dave Ross was a member of the NPC behaviors team. He was an older gentleman, and he was a key member of that team. And he was killed in a tragic accident. And that destroyed that team. Our little team there that we were working on, it just completely wrecked us, because, when you've only got 5 or 6 people working on an idea and one of them gets killed, what are you going to do?
Horrible.
So it actually impacted the game all the way through, in my opinion, because after Dave died, then we had to realign that team. I got put into a position of being a producer again, now over the NPC behaviors and over the development of the castle itself. But we were never able, in my opinion, to fully recover from the death of Dave Ross. And so some of the things that we were planning to do in the game never made it in, because we were always struggling to catch up with that devastation. I mean, it just destroys a team for months when you lose somebody who's very core. And I don't think most people know that, but I feel like maybe they should know why it says in loving memory of Dave Ross at the end of the credits.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, nobody's ever, I think, really said that story.
Yeah.
But it was one of the many challenges that Hogwarts Legacy faced in its development, and that's also why I think some of the features that you see, people never know, like, why isn't this feature in the game? Well, did somebody die? In this case, yes. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans of any media, whether it's video games or movies or comic books or whatever it is, I don't think they realize how many moving parts there are to make something, especially as massive as a AAA game, to make that come to life. That so many things can happen, and it's almost like a butterfly effect. If one thing goes wrong, it just sets off this chain reaction of other things that go wrong, and maybe things don't turn out quite the way you'd hoped. But I mean, that's a really, I mean, it's sad. And I'm very sorry, but it's a fascinating story. For people.
Yeah, and I'm sure this happens on a lot of other games too, right? That something really tragic happens, and we were making the game in the middle of the pandemic, right? Everybody had to go home for that, and there was an earthquake in Salt Lake City, a major earthquake, which shook things all up and caused problems for us too. So the game, I feel like it faced a lot of challenges with J.K. Rowling, with all these other things going on, and it still came out and pleased the fans, and it warmed a lot of the hearts of, I think, the folks at Avalanche. You see a lot of people, a lot of that Avalanche studio was just delighted to see so many fans so happy.
Yeah,
and I think that was a brilliant move by our PR team. Once they attacked me, right? The PR team at Avalanche said, well, we're going to go direct to the fans from here on. They didn't even go to the press anymore, right? They just started going direct with those videos. They went and talked to, Expecto Go, the Retro Raconteur. They developed this kind of little YouTube community that was promoting Hogwarts Legacy on their behalf instead of talking to the gaming press.
And it's interesting.
Super well. Yeah.
A lot of people speculated that's what was going on. From the outside, it looked like it's like they're just cutting the Kotakus and the Polygons out of this completely. Like, this is crazy. But then again, that seemed to be, to me, it seemed to signal an end of the reliance on the gaming press, because at this point you can go directly to the fans. Like back in the day, EGM, it was a magazine for fans by fans. It was fans talking to other fans. You didn't have the media getting in between, until gaming kind of got bigger and became more Hollywood, like you're saying. But like, I'm wondering, are more studios going to look at Hogwarts and be like, hey, we really don't need these guys as much as they think we need them, and we can just go directly to the fandom, through YouTube or TikTok or podcasts or whatever.
I sure hope so. I feel like the gaming press has poisoned the way that fans and developers interact, because they're always telling fans what they should think. They're always telling players, this is what you should think about this game because it's socially conscious or whatever. And we need to get them out of there. And I think fans and developers just talk directly to one another about what games they like. And the gaming press's value to the industry is very low now, right? I mean, the only thing they're good for is announcements. Everything else is just these shallow, opinionated, not very well investigated sort of reports that are pushing social agendas. And like, I don't even read most of the gaming articles anymore. I go to YouTubers like you to find out what's going on in the industry, because I don't trust the gaming press anymore. So.
Well, thank you, I guess. No pressure, but like we actually, the only reason we go to these websites is to make fun of them. I mean, but I'm gonna tell you the truth. I've noticed a change in the last 6 or 8 months, and I think it's because it seems like the money's starting to run out on these websites, and it seems like some of the sites are starting to rein it in, and I think they're getting the order from on high to rein it in. Like, you're actively chasing off the readers that we have left. Shut up. If you want to keep your job, shut up. And the weird thing about it is, like, any of these journalists, if they hate, and they do seem to really hate YouTubers, like a lot of these people just loathe people like us. You could have, at any point in time, you could have pivot the video. You could have pivoted. You could have started your own YouTube channel, or started your own podcast, or started a fanzine or something, but it's so much easier to just take over a warm seat from somebody else, isn't it? And let them pay all the bills and let them build it from the ground up. And, I personally don't have a lot of respect for that. I think I have more respect, again, for guys who started their own websites back in the day, or started their own channels, or started their own zines that turned into, blew up, like, EGM or so many of the other, gaming zines out there, because you had to build it from scratch, and that's how you knew you had something, because you built from scratch and you built your audience from scratch. And this new breed of, like, journalists, activists, whatever, they're just like, yeah, I graduated from college. I'm owed a job. I'm owed a platform, and everybody has to listen to me because I've got a journalism degree. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess. And then they get rejected by the audience, and then they scream at the audience for that. And I'm like, you never built that connection, right? Because people can smell it. Gamers can smell it. Geeks can smell it. We are so used to being the outsiders. Yes. We can tell when people don't like us. Like, you get that sixth sense, like, they're humoring me. They don't like me very much. I know that feeling because I've been there so many times in my life,
Yeah, and we mentioned Gamergate way back in the beginning, but that's what, to me, Gamergate was. In 2014, when the press dropped all those articles on the exact same day, right? It was all the same day, and they all said about the same thing, which was gamers are dead. Gamers don't need to be your audience. That line of press, that like attacking your fans has got to be the craziest thing. They're attacking I still don't really get what the point of that was, other than it was like a social justice movement. It wasn't about games. It wasn't about fans. It was about pushing some agenda, and they smelled it, right? That's why Gamergate happened. Is people, they said, "What are you doing?"
Personal opinion, I don't think it has anything to do with social justice. I've been watching like all these cancel. I think it is, the root of it is petty ass jealousy. I think it's
jealousy. You really think so?
I think that's the root of it. I mean, I think there might be, a little bit of crossover there with politics, whatever. But I think it's jealousy, using social issues as a reason to get people to listen to you. Like every time you look at somebody getting canceled, or you look at like, they go on a bender. Now the thing is like, oh, now we got to attack YouTubers. Now I've been covering this. Like even got Hollywood, the Hollywood unions are attacking YouTubers now because I guess we're scabs, because we're still making low budget YouTube videos during the strike. Because I'm supposed to be on strike too, right? Even though I'm not a member of the union, right? I'm not an actor. I'm not a member of the union.
And they're trying to thought of that, but
yeah. So my personal opinion with the gaming journos and the comic book journos and all these people is that they are trying to send a message to the game developers. Don't listen to the fans. Listen to us. Make games for us. Make games to please us. You have to please us. We're the gatekeepers. We're the tastemakers. Just like this happened in comics too. You had people making comics that didn't sell very well, but they wanted to please, the elites, the tastemakers in the comic book industry. And eventually we saw that, the sales dwindled, and the general public was just like, what the hell are you doing? But it's like, hey, it won awards. It's like, okay, good for you. It won awards. Did it sell well? Did it make its money back? Did it, please gamers? So, I mean, personally, and again, I wasn't there, but just looking at it in hindsight, it really felt to me like it was a power play to take the power away from the players and put it in the back pocket of the media, because they knew they weren't supposed to be there. They knew they weren't actual gamers. They knew they were fake. And it was like imposter syndrome. So if we get rid of the gamers and we push them out, and we have the studios listen to us, then we can tell them, then we belong here because we have a reason to be here, because we get to determine, what makes it to market and what doesn't. And I've seen this time and time and time again. Again, we've seen it in comics, we've seen it in the animation. You have people that know, frankly, jack shit about the industry. They don't really care about the industry they're in. They just want to have control. And they want to be the ones who can put in their Twitter bios, I'm the so-and-so with this award, not award, and that's what it's about. It's about clout. It's ultimately, it's about clout and control and feeling important, because on some level that you're not. So how do you change that? If all these gamers are calling you out, if they actually saw that you were fake, how do you control that? Well, you demonize all the gamers so the studios don't listen to them. They listen to you, And that's just my armchair opinion, because based on just the stuff we cover, and I'm no psychologist, but it just seems like that has happened time and time again. Because again, we're seeing it right now with YouTube. YouTubers are awful. YouTubers are the devil. YouTubers need to be silenced. YouTubers need to be because we're a threat. We're a threat to mainstream media. We're a threat to Hollywood. We're a threat to the system. We make them look bad because a lot of YouTubers pull bigger numbers than their people that have been properly vetted. So you have to take us out of play, right? If you can't beat them, you have to use dirty tricks to do it, because in a fair fight, you'll never win. So you have to use dirty tricks to take out your competition. Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. And then what you do to justify
it's a pretty compelling argument. I can see where you're coming from. So yeah.
So to justify it, you're like, well, we're doing it because of LGBTQ plus rights. So you can't call us out. We're not being vindictive. We're not being petty. It's not about us. It's not about us at all. It's about all these poor marginalized people. So God forbid, because if you call us out, you're against all these poor marginalized people, but you're actually using, in my opinion, you're using those poor marginalized people to take out your competition. That is what the conclusion I've come to after years of being knee deep in this bullshit. And I think it's ending. I really do think it's ending. Like you can fool some of the people some of the time, but it's getting to the point now where everybody's wise to it. And it's the same. It's a very limited, reminds me of the Water Boy. where the guy stole Henry Winkler's playbook, because he couldn't come up with any plays on his own. They keep playing the same place 3-4 times. It's the same thing. Oh, we're going to coordinate. We're going to get this person canceled. Then we're going to scream misogyny and racism and bigotry and blah, 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 blah. Then when that doesn't work, oh, we're going to unionize so you can't fire us. And then when that doesn't work, we're going to go out there and scream about how unjust everything is. And the YouTubers are out to get us, and the gamers are out to get us, and everybody's out to get us. Like, just take the L, go get a job at fucking Starbucks or whatever, Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. And I've run out of, at first I was like, well, maybe I'm the bad guy. Maybe it's like, no, I think people were correct. People, again, geeks are very good at smelling bullshit, because we have been down this road so many times in our lives. Like, we know a fake, we know when somebody's being a fake friend. It's like the Carrie syndrome. Like, we know when we're being led to slaughter. We know when people are going to drag us out and make fun of us. So we have a sense about these things. And that's what a lot of these people are doing. They don't care about the industry. They don't care about the craft. A lot of them, they just want the clout. They want the platform, and they're losing that. And now they're losing their freaking minds. Oh, well,
I just realized it's getting dark here. Let me turn on the light. Alexa, turn on Troy's light. Well, I don't know if that helped much, but
oh, there you go. I don't have one of those in my house. I refuse.
Well, that's good, because she might have hered me and might have turned on your light. I don't
know. Well, I guess to wrap this up, and I'm sorry, I mean to take you down, a couple of different rabbit holes here.
Oh, it's great. I like talking with you. It's great.
Oh, hey, thank you. No, it's greatly appreciated. I've been following this situation for a while, and it's great to be able to talk to you about it. Indie game developers. So what do you think of the indie scene right now? Because I'm actually really excited by it.
Yeah, I think the indie scene, in fact, I spend way more time browsing indie games, playing indie games, just being kind of involved in that scene than I do anything AAA. And I think a lot of your good ideas come out of that. So I put 130 hours into Marvel's Midnight Suns, which was based on Slay the Spire, right? It's basically Slay the Spire translated, or Monster Train. One of these independent games that were developed around the card deck building idea. They brought that over to AAA for Marvel's Midnight Suns, and I thought they did a great job. And to me, that's what the independent game development community is doing, is they're exploring all these cool new ideas. You see all the stuff with like roguelites and card development and things happening first in the indie scene, and then the AAA scene picks up and pulls some of that stuff out. Like Stardew Valley was incredibly successful, right? Yeah. And then there's a lot of that slips into the AAA scene. And I remember a lot of the guys at Avalanche, we were all playing Stardew Valley for a while. It's just, I think the indie scene is where the innovation is, the cool stuff is. I thought Hades, independently developed game in 2020, best game of the year. Yeah. Best game of the year in 2020, independent game. So yeah, I'm totally on board with the independent scene. And I've got friends who've left the mainstream industry and have worked in independent games. I don't think any of them have done very well successfully, but they love the ability to just make what they want and see who enjoys it. They're making it for the love of the game. And I think you just get better product. You just get better games when you make it because you love it and you want, to make something great.
Yeah, I think that's true of anything. I mean, you look at all the things that people love now. I mean, J.K. Rowling, I mean, she didn't write Harry Potter because she wanted to get rich. I mean, she had a story to tell. I mean, she had no way of knowing she was going to become one of the richest authors in history.
Richer than the King of England. Yeah.
Right. I mean, she had no way of knowing that, right? She's like living in her car or whatever the heck was going on there. And it's the same with George Lucas, Star Wars. It was a story he wanted to tell, and not a lot of people believed in it. And we see this time and time again. All these things that we take for granted, they're like corporate IP, were at one point in time done because somebody just had a story they wanted to tell. They did it because they loved it. It came from the heart, and not to get like sappy or whatever. But then when it became more corporatized, then we see kind of joy get like sucked out of it, And I've seen this with a lot of my favorite franchises. It feels like some of the more recent installments have been, product. But then you look at, like, I love Bloodstained, the 8-bit Bloodstained games. And I'm like, I would love for Konami to make Castlevania games again, good 2D Castlevania games again. But I don't think that's their priority right now. But you can still get Castlevania adjacent games from people who worked on those games, you know, and it still feels like they actually cared about this. I mean, they wouldn't have done it, you know, otherwise, because it's like they could have done anything else, probably made more money than they did off of that. But you see a lot of this. You see a lot of people that are like, our generation that grew up playing games, and they're like, these are the kinds of games I'd love to see. Minecraft. I mean, God, Minecraft's like the biggest thing out there, and that was like a guy, a guy. You know,
Notch. There he goes. Yeah.
Did Minecraft, right? And now it's like freaking the biggest thing ever. But you can see the difference between Minecraft under Notch and Minecraft under Microsoft. You know, it is what it is. Yeah.
I have kind of this, I'll briefly lay out this hypothesis of like 3 generations that I think have passed through the game industry. So I think the first generation starts in 1975 or about right around then. So this is the Nolan Bushnell era, the coin-op era, right? And in that era, everybody was a commando. Nobody had done games before, right? So everybody was just trying to figure it out, blowing stuff up as they go, right? And then I think generation 2 begins in 1995, 20 years later, with the arrival of the PlayStation 1, the home console and that. And this, I think, for the next 20 years or so, I would say is the infantry phase. So you got commandos in the first phase, infantry in the second phase. So from 95 until about 2015, that's the era I was in. That's kind of infantry. That's where we're coming into the industry with the intent to make it profitable, the intent to take ground and hold it. Like we're building the industry. In 95, like when I joined, it was a very high risk to work in games, right? I was out of jobs all the time. But now if you land in a studio, you're into the third phase. Post 2015, I think we're now in the third phase, which I would say is the police phase, right? So we moved from commandos, then to infantry, and then to police. It's almost like a war. You started with the commandos, and then you went to infantry, and now we're in the policing phase where all the wars have been won, the battle is over, games have taken over the planet, right? Games are now on top. They weren't in 95, but they are now. And so it's all about policing and maintaining what they've already established. Everybody's gotten kind of conservative in the same way that you might, and all the interesting stuff has moved from AAA over to the indie, where they're willing to take more risks, and they're willing to try things, and they're making things for the love of the game. Whereas I think a lot of our AAA studios have turned into police forces that are just trying to maintain what they've got that have been won by the infantry that came before them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense, because I'm kind of seeing that right now, like in every industry. Like there's more interesting stuff coming out of independence and the explosion in crowdfunding, and you're seeing very, very cool stuff that wouldn't have existed otherwise if you had to go through, the system. But now that you have direct access to an audience, and you can say, hey, I need a couple $100,000 to make this game a reality. Would you like to see it? And that never would have happened 20, 30 years ago. It was like, no, you had to be like, okay, I got to go through this publisher, and I got to pitch it, and I got to, or I could work on it for 2 years and then they quietly kill it or whatever. Now it's like, yeah, you want to see this game? Yeah, we'll make this game. We'll make this game for you if you give us the money to do it. And that's totally different. That's a game changer for everything, whether it's video games or comic books or animation or toys or, and I think we're seeing a lot of just very, very cool stuff. And I don't think people realize, for all the complaining that people think we do on the channel, like there's some really cool indie stuff that's being made right now.
What do you got your eye on? Tell me something.
Oh my God, why'd you ask me that? Because I just forgot.
I just want to know some cool indie title.
No, there was one I was looking at the other day, and it slipped my mind. It was a Mega Man style game, and it was very cool. And I have it on my Steam list. And I can't pull that up without killing the stream right now. But I know my son,
wish list always has tons of.
I usually I'll see them. I'll mark it on my list, and then I'll be like, I don't remember the title of it, but I remember what the concept was. And a lot of them are. I have them on pre-order and stuff, but there's one that looked really cool, and it was like a very Mega Man adjacent game. But like my son, he loves. This is my son. He's not a teenager anymore, but he loved kind of the retro style games. Like he loved Shovel Knight. He played Shovel Knight a lot, and the kids roll into Undertale, which was kind of retro themed, and it just seems like you can do a lot with relatively little resources. We played what was that one he really liked? It Forager, which I thought was really cool. And it was like a mashup of like Minecraft and Terraria, and it was like had like really colorful like Zelda type graphics, and a lot of just very open-ended games that are being made, and that feel like games, not like you're just playing the cinematic. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of really good stuff being made. Tabletop games, I've got so many tabletop games I want to play that just look amazing, and I'm not excited by a lot of the stuff coming out of like Wizards of the Coast now. I'm not excited by stuff coming out of Activision Blizzard now, but you look at the indie space and we're like, that's where the next big thing is going to be. And I want somebody to look at and hopefully avoid a lot of the pitfalls and be like, look, here's what happens when you sell your baby to some corporation. Let's build something up and let's try to keep it, and I know this stuff's expensive, but let's try to keep as much control of it as possible, even if we have to go smaller, even if we grow slower, rather than just sell it to some corporation that's going to bastardize it, and I'm hoping whatever the next Minecraft or the next World of Warcraft is, that whoever develops that has the foresight to be like, yeah, we have a game plan and it doesn't involve selling it to EA. We're going to build this thing up. We're going to maintain it to the best of our ability ourselves. We'll get funding ourselves, and we're just not going to sell it. We're not going to sell it right away because, we know what happens. Ask Notch what happened to Minecraft.
Right. Or George Lucas, what happened to Star Wars?
Oh, exactly. I mean,
goodness. Yeah.
This is the thing, right? And I think that is. I would love to see people that create things hold on to the things that they created because they created them because they love them. And George Lucas, I mean, he was like, hey, I sold my kids. I'm like, well, you don't sell your kids, George. I understand you're upset, and I understand the fans piss you off. I understand maybe you don't want to make more movies, but if it meant that much to you, if Star Wars meant that much to you, why the hell did you sell it? Because you knew what was going to happen. As soon as you sign that dotted line, it's theirs, man. There's not a damn thing you can do. It doesn't matter what they promised you. It doesn't matter what it's gone. It is gone. When I was a teenager, my first car was beautiful Z28 Camaro, and I spent so much time rebuilding that thing. My grandfather had a body shop, and I spent probably 6 or 8. I was just telling my wife the story the other day, and it was a beautiful car. 6 or 8 months, every penny I had went into restoring that car. I pulled the dents myself. I did so much of the painting myself and the engine work, and it was a beautiful car. And I had it senior year of high school, and I drove
it. Like has a whole personality for you, right?
It did. I love that car. I didn't name it or anything, but Midnight Blue Metallic. Oh God, I love that thing so much.
Lovely. Yeah.
And so when I moved back to California, I couldn't take the car with me because it got 8 miles to the gallon. It's a 350. I got 8 miles to the gallon, right? So I sold it to a guy. And, it was one of those things where I'm like, you promised me you're going to take care of this car, right? You promised me you're going to take, because this car means, like, you don't understand. This is my first car. Like, I spent all of my money on this car, and this kills me to sell this car. But if you're convinced you're the right person, sure, kid, sure. I'm like, no, like, you don't understand. This car is very important to me.
Yeah.
And you better not mess. You just, God. And I shed a tear when I sold that damn car. 2 weeks later, there's a story in a newspaper about some dumbass who got drunk and rolled a Z28 Camaro.
Oh man, you got to be kidding me! That's
guess whose car that was. Yeah, guess whose car that was. It got totaled. He was fine, I think. My wife's like, did he live? I'm like,
unfortunately, yes, yeah.
I think he did, but all I could do was focus on the picture of my beautiful car that had been destroyed.
Oh wow!
And so I sold my baby, but I didn't have a choice because, like I said, how am I going to drive that thing to California? It got 8 miles to the gallon. But it happens, and once you sell your babies, you can't get them back. So hopefully more people have the foresight. They can look at this era in gaming and content media and be like, yeah, let's never sell our stuff to some company because
Be smart like Rowling, right? She still gets a bit of everything she does, and she owns it all still.
Oh yeah.
So she's been smart. Part of the reason she's so rich is because she's been so smart.
Absolutely. Her and George, right? Well, other than selling to Disney. But before that, do you have any advice for any aspiring game developers, Troy, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say get out there. So whenever anybody's asked me about joining the industry, I think the best thing you can have on hand is a portfolio of something you've done. It's more important than an education, I think, than like having a degree, is to say, here's a game I worked on and here's what it does. So if you're trying to get into the game industry, I think the best thing to do is start making a game. Like there are so many tools out there now with Game Maker or whatever, you could independently go and develop a game. And then even if you don't make any money on it, even if you don't sell it, you'll have the experience of actually trying to build and produce a product, a game. And that experience is just tremendous in the game industry. Like, don't wait, go build your game as soon as you can. Like Sid Meier used to say, the creator of the Civilization series, is that the most important thing in developing a successful game is to make it playable as soon as you can. Even if it's ugly, even if it's rough, even if it looks horrible, because gameplay is what, game development's all about. It's got to be playable before it looks pretty. It's got to be playable before the audio's there. You've got to make sure that you're just focused on your gameplay from the start. And it's actually a big problem in AAA because executives want to see pretty cinematics. They want to see big explosions. They want to see lots of nice stuff. And you bring them a bunch of white boxes with, things moving around, and they can't see the vision of it. And you have to say, no, it'll be great. But you can, if you're an indie developer, you can say, oh, this little box moving like this is someday going to be, a silver wizard or something. And you can focus on what's important in independent development. And so that's my recommendation. Just start making a game and then build a portfolio of games. Bring your portfolio if you're trying to look into the mainstream industry of games that you've worked on or stuff that you've done.
Okay.
And I'm a little bit shaky on going to school for education. Although like the University of Utah, I think up there has a really good games program. We took a lot of interns into Hogwarts Legacy from the University of Utah, and they were great. Most of them were really awesome. But I don't think that's necessary anymore. I think you can do a lot just hands-on, teach yourself and go. Yeah. Make a Is that the sort of thing you were hoping for?
Yeah, actually, no, that's cool. Cause that's actually, now my wife is actually an art teacher, and, we talk about, getting into creative industries, and we're even like, I hesitate to tell somebody to go to school because especially when you're dealing with the creative industry, like you're going to learn by doing, and technology changes so fast. Like what you're learning in school, you spent 4 years learning a program that might not even be used by the time you graduate, or whatever. And, so it's kind of like, if you can get in without having the formal training, I mean, it's absolutely a bonus. I want to tell people, don't go to college, just go. No, but like, I'm with you on this because there's so many people that have done so many great things in creative industries, whether it's, games or whatever, and they didn't have any formal training, or their formal training was in something completely unrelated. Because a lot of times if you're breaking new ground, who's going to train you how to do that? Who's going to train you, especially if you're working with brand new technology, like who's going to train you to do that? By the time it gets to the school, it's already decade old.
It's already old. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going to school is great if you're going to learn and improve your craft. But if you're going there just to get credentialed, to get a degree or to learn the classes, I think that's a bad move. I think it's much better to just hands on it, get in there. Right. John Lasseter used to say, the goal is to fail fast, to find out what your problems are, fail as quickly as you can, and then learn from it. And I totally agree that you learn by hands on.
That's awesome. All right. I think we're going to wrap this up. It's been almost 2 hours, but I really appreciate the time, Troy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. Again, it's great, Neon. I'd love to come on your show again if you ever want to do it.
Absolutely.
Just fun to hang out with somebody who knows a lot about games and talks about this stuff. So.
I don't know if I know a lot about games, but I like to talk about stuff.
Well,
so where can people find you now, Troy? Where can they find you online?
Well, I'm pretty quiet. You can still visit my YouTube channel if you want. It's just in my name, Troy Leavitt, or I'm on Twitter. Troyless True is my Twitter tag, but just look up Troy Leavitt. But I'm not, I'm retired now. I'm not really active in games or anything like that right now. I'm just kind of following it. I'm playing all the games that I never had a chance to play in the past, trying to get better at chess, but I suck. Well, I'm 1,300 rating right now on chess, so I kind of been trying to get better at that. But other than that, I'm living the retired life.
Awesome. One of these days I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there one of these. I swear. I keep telling my wife, like, one of these days we're gonna retire. We're gonna have free time. But hey, thank you so much again for coming on, guys. Please give us a like or subscribe wherever you found this podcast. I don't know where all it's going. It's going to be on Spotify and Amazon and Apple, and of course on YouTube, Rumble, where we post content. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Leavitt, for coming on. We're going to say goodbye for now.